This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Hey folks, welcome to the podcast. Happy Wednesday. How's everybody doing today? The number of ounces of silver needed to buy an ounce of gold now at near 30-year highs. Silver is bargain priced when compared to gold, and it's a perfect time to protect a portion of your savings with silver. And Silver Gold Bull has a wide variety of best value silver for every budget. Simply text or email Grahame for details. Whether you are a seasoned investor or new to precious metals, Grahame will work with you to answer all your questions and recommend the best products to meet your investing goals. It's all down in the show notes. If you're on silvergoldbull.ca or .com, just make sure to reference the Shaun Newman Podcast. Bow Valley Credit Union is your Alberta-regulated, fully serviced financial institution, and they're proud to present the first in Canada gold collateral lending. Now, all of you can lend against your physical gold and silver for favorable rates. It's like a HELOC on your gold and silver, and if you don't have any gold and silver, that is, you can also get a loan to purchase it from Bow Valley Credit Union. All you got to do is start your Bow Valley Credit Union membership today. Send an email to welcome@bowvalleycu.com. It's all down in the show notes. And start a better path forward with Bow Valley CU. Prophet River. When it comes to firearms, optics, accessories, they serve all of Canada. So listen up, Canada. They got a brand new website, easy for all of you to use, some cool new features. On any purchase, just use the coupon code SNP. It gets into monthly draws that can, reward you for purchasing through Prophet River. And when it comes to firearms, optics, accessories, all your gun needs, don't look any further than Prophet River. Just head to profitriver.com and you can get, a huge variety of firearms and expert staff to help you get what you need where you're at today in Canada. Just go to profitriver.com. Diamond 7 Meats. Well, tired of the big chain stores, folks? Discover Diamond 7 Meats, a family-run business you can trust, serving our beautiful community for over 26 years. And in all the conversations I've had with their staff, they kept on repeating how important their values of honesty and integrity are while serving their community. They offer all the cuts you can find at any retail store, and their expert staff can help you with, anything you need to know about meat, whether, how thick you want it, to cooking temperatures, and a whole lot more. Heck, whether or not you're getting the right cut, maybe, they can offer any cuts. And you can just call them and be like, hey, I would like this fresh. Can you make this? They'll do that. You can also just show up, and they got it sitting there in the freezer as well. They're on Highway 17 and 67th Street North. You can give them a call today. That is, give Diamond 7 Meats a call today, 306-825-9718. If you're looking for concrete, stamped concrete, the new studio, the guys who did that, Renegade Acres, that's Caleb Taves, and reach out if you're looking for somebody to lay a pad or, some stamped concrete like he does. Fantastic work. Can't speak. Wow, there's a lot of men that have come through the podcast. Let me tell you, I've been very humbled at some of the people that have come around this podcast. Caleb Taves is just one of the many. The Cornerstone Forum 2026, believe me, we're working on it here in July. We're hoping to have an answer. I keep saying that. And hopefully I'll have an answer for you sooner than later. I want to remind everybody, for the month of July, we have no Tuesday episode. So if you're going, where was Tuesday? We don't have a Tuesday episode for the month of July. And then Thursdays is Throwback Thursdays. Friday, mashup at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard regular time. But Tuesday has a guest co-host for the month of July as I head off on holidays and I guess continue holidays with the wife and kids. So if you're wondering, that's where, or wondering why, I should say why there's no Tuesday, that'd be why. We take a little bit of a break here in July and recharge the batteries, and we'll be ready to roll August 1. Have no worries. I think we get back on a it's still there, on a mashup, if memory serves me correct. If you're listening or watching on Spotify, Apple, Rumble, YouTube, X, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to leave a review. Make sure to hit the retweet. Make sure to, cut out your favorite parts of the podcast. I just saw a cool one where people were making commentary on some of the guests. That's cool too. You have fun with it. If you're enjoying it, obviously text me. My number's down in the show notes. Would love to hear your thoughts. All right, let's get on to that tale of the tape. Today's guest is an astrologer, numerologist, author, and speaker. I'm talking about Sharita Star. So buckle up. Here we go. Well, welcome to the Shaun Newman podcast. Today I'm joined by Sharita Star. So, ma'am, thanks for hopping on.
Thank you so much for having me, Shaun. It's a pleasure to be working with you and your audience as well.
Well, I have to first give a shout out to LTC Stephen Murray because me and him got talking. You know, he's been on the podcast several times. And he looked at me one time after we're done. He's like, "You really want to understand this?" And I'm like, I don't know, I guess. And he's like, "Well, you got to start to learn how different people think." I'm like, "Okay." And so then, of course, he connected us. And so I know next to nothing about you. I shouldn't say nothing, but close to it because I've listened to some things of yours. But other than that, I'm like, I'm going to assume my audience has never heard of you. And the fact that I don't know a ton about you other than what Stephen has told me, I'm like, well, maybe we could just start there, Sharita. Maybe you could just tell us a bit about yourself, and then we'll get into all the different topics.
Absolutely. The work that I do with conscious forecasting, and in particular, I've dedicated. Well, I've always done America's forecast in the work that I've done. I've been doing this work. Well, for many lifetimes, if you're open to that, as I've been told by many mediums that this isn't the first merry-go-round for me to understand this, which is why it comes off my tongue so quickly. It is just something I guess you could say I channel it. I had someone call me the psychic of the planets at one point over the past couple decades, and I guess that sort of applies, but the difference between me and a psychic or a medium is that I'm utilizing the cycles of planets in order to understand what the energy that we're all watching in the current time is doing. And we do this through the two divination tools of astrology and numerology. And back in when I was a lot less mature than I am now, I'll just use that. I don't like to say years old because I think that just kind of puts a negative spin on it. We mature in our years, and I think we get years wise if we can be open to that. But when I was in my late 20s is when I guess you could call it my faucet turned on. And once I was always interested in astrology when I was a kid. I mean, I was 7 years old reading the horoscope in the newspaper, and I had no idea why. I just did it. You know, I gravitated to it. It was next to the comics, you know, it was kind of fun. And then as this work got introduced to me, I realized as my mentor, Linda Goodman, said, don't take my word for any of this. Go out and apply it. And it was then I realized I never forgot anyone's birthday that I really knew very well in my life. And I had like this database that kept like coming in, like all these people with their numbers and this, that, and everything she explained in the book that really, again, turned the faucet on in this channel as it never has shut off since for the last couple of decades. That's what I do. I mean, it's like I see life in a very different, you know, it's like Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Murray said, it's a different way of thinking. It isn't the way we are programmed in you know, normal life. And or how school and education, I mean, it's not anywhere in our education. You have to go find it out for yourself. And once I did all of that, I applied it, and I was like, wow, this is intense how this works. You know, we're always in a form of a cycle. We're in multitudes of cycles simultaneously throughout our entire life. But what we want to do always is narrow in on the focus all the time. And that's especially what I've been doing very hardcore since the pandemic because my entire work base changed at that time. Obviously, as everyone's work base kind of changed across the globe, mine, certainly did. Everything I had developed previous, I didn't do as much physical work. I shifted a lot of things to online. So it's a little bit about my background, and but I believe in what you cannot see. And that's the energy of these. I mean, not that, the planets are there, but people don't understand that they have a value from as above to see down here below. Why do we watch what we watch? Why are things energetically, consciously, however you would like to phrase that, why are they happening that way? There's always an explanation.
Okay. Let's start with the cycle of the planets. We're going back to grade school here or something for Shaun on this side, folks. Well, like the cycle of the planets makes complete sense to me. And then I assume, depending on the rotation of our planet, among other things going on, the amount of energy coming through, or if you were to use that frame of mind, I guess you could understand that at different times, more or less energy would be hitting the planet. Am I getting anywhere near the mark on the way you would put it when you're talking about the cycles of planets and their the relevance to human beings on Earth?
You're right on the money, because things get, with the way that the cycles work, and no two moments in time are ever the same way twice. That's the one thing, understanding the astrology alone. There's, when you have a birth chart, which you have, I have, America has, Canada has it, everyone has one. Anything with a point of initiation, of course, which for us humans is our birthday, and a country has a birthday, it has a point of initiation. So what we do is we take that capture, like a photograph of where all the cycles were playing out, and that math, it's all math. It's sacred geometry is really what it is at the end of the day. It's all in a wheel. It's all divided in 12 sections. It's 30 degrees of space in each one. If you were a geometry person in high school, for example, your ability to understand astrology is pretty keen, because it will relate to geometry very, very well. I mean, just on a mathematical level, if that's something that resonates with you. And I always get people that go, "Oh God, I was horrible at math."
I
I
wasn't
don't
horrible.
understand this.
I wasn't horrible at math. I at all. I enjoyed math until it came to imaginary numbers, and then I was like, "What's the point of that?" Like, I just don't see any. And so they kind of lost me at some point. And I think any subject, if you get the wrong teacher, and I'm not saying that could have been the right for someone else, but I had teachers along the way that just didn't light you up with certain subjects.
I
But as a young
agree.
kid,
The teacher makes all the difference. That is so true in subject matter of any kind when we're being educated across the board. So if they don't trigger your enthusiasm, or I mean, I would agree with you. Once we got past algebra and geometry, the trig just blew me out. Like, I was like, nah, it's way beyond what and I just skipped calculus altogether, because I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. It was beyond my scope of how, it resonates with me. So I agree with you on teachers. It's so important to have a teacher that is encouraging and isn't flat as they're delivering the information to you, and always encourages you to ask questions, because that's the only way you learn anything, is by asking a question.
I'm going to assume my audience is why has Shaun brought Sharita on? And I'm going to give a little bit of a backstory into the conversation I had with LTC Stephen Murray, because we were talking about I don't know what word to put to it, but I guess bad guys, evil guys, I don't know, maybe just guys, and how they look at the world, and trying to control it, what the outcomes are. And he said, I talked to this lady, Sharita Star. I said, okay. And he's like, I can't make heads or tails of what the heck she's talking about, but I know they believe in it. And I'm like, okay.
Yes.
And then I tacked that on to what Martin Armstrong told me, folks, when he was in Calgary. He said, don't judge someone with the way you think, but on the way they think. And I'm like, okay, well then you have to add in how they think, or at least how someone else is staring at the events of the world. Rita, like you rattled off 4 different things there where I wrote them all down. I'm like, well, I could just spend half an hour on each of them, or I can just try and start this with, I'm trying to understand on how different people view events in the world, and why they stare at certain days of the week or certain times of the year or certain I'm probably hammering 15 things to you. You're like, whoa, let's start here. But wherever you want to go with that, I look at it and I'm like, I'm just trying to understand, as I listened to one of your videos and talking about, June's going to be a big month. Well, I mean, Iran got bombed and then Iran turned around. And in the same video you said, but it's all a magician's trick. And I'm like, well, I just had a conversation that would say that was bang on correct.
Yeah.
And so I go, where do you want this to go for a somebody who doesn't go into this realm very much? I wasn't really drawn to I enjoyed the comics, but I didn't sit and read, Taurus and go, oh, that's me. I just was never that person. So where would you take me with this conversation? Take the audience for that matter, when you're staring at world events and you realize the whole purpose of trying to have this conversation is to try and understand how others are viewing the world and then trying to make their moves because of those things.
Well, these powers that be, and of course, yes, Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Murray and I have, always talked about, okay, they know what I understand, but they're not using it to empower you. They're using it to control us. That's exactly what they're up to. They understand how these cycles are there's somebody out there that gets this. I mean, whoever's advising them and, we're going to drop this on particular days and so on and so forth. And
do you think it could be luck? Just really dumb question. Do you think there's any way that is just straight up luck, that they have no idea what you're talking about?
The powers that be?
Correct.
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay.
No. Now, there's too much evidence as far as we know they have to hypnotize people in the ways that they do. They want people to be in that trauma space. They want people to be in fear because that's how you control people, first and foremost. Because anything I can tell you in your own personal forecast has a polarity to it. So whether we're looking at it from the astrology,
sorry.
that's okay.
When you say it has a polarity to it, what do you mean by that? Like there's a dual outcome, you're saying?
Meaning, like, all energy has positive or negative. So how do you want to use that energy that's coming at us? Like, I always refer to it as the collective energy, or some, energy healers, and they call it the collective consciousness. There's all different, like, little terminologies you could refer to. I always call it collective energy when it comes to, the things that, you have looked at, concerning, like what you were talking about, especially concerning June as what we know it as, a universal month. So, I guess just to get people's feet wet into where we are, we're in a universal year right now where you take the number of 2025 and you add that up, and that equates to the number 9. So the number 9 in numerology means endings, conclusions, finalizations, dynamic, driving energy, aggressive, penetrating situations, events, conflict. So the universe and the globe overall is at the end of a 9-year span in its own, how we're all spinning around on this planet, as one unit of humanity. And next year in 2026, we are embarking upon a brand new 9-year chapter, because 2026 will equate to 10, which reduces back down to 1. So everything in numerology, when you want to find, okay, what's the current of the energy I'm looking at? Compound numbers always reduce to a number that will be only 1 to 9. It's the only way math works. You don't have any other single digits except 1 to 9. So when you start to understand the principles and the concepts of, well, what does 1 mean? It's the beginning. It's the initiation. It's back at 1. It's seed planting. It's, getting things cultivated in new soil, for example. And then the 2 nurtures things. And there's emotion and there's feeling involved anytime you're dealing with 2 energy. It's very paternal. It's very chicken soup for the soul. The 3 allows, after that, for growth to happen. And some little, those seeds start to emerge. The 4 is about getting obstacles out of your way, just like roots under the ground. If you start connecting it to like a seed understanding or growing a garden, for example. So when you're in 4 energy, you're getting things out of your way. And like when roots grow under the ground, what do? They keep going, even if they come up against an obstacle, like a rock or something. It just, I'm going to allow that rock to be where it is, and I'm going to get around that rock. I'm going to just overcome it. No big deal. You can be, I can be. Then the 5 brings us to very strong leveraging, accelerated changes. There's always a lot of movement and like irreversible change at that point. And when you look at the structure of 1 to 4, it's built a foundation at that point. And the 5 can then springboard off of it. And then you arrive at 6, which is about compassion, understanding, and seeking to understand before being understood. And it's the balancer of everything. It wants some form of equilibrium to come in. But it can also be very charming and persuasive. And, well, as we were talking about with June in particular, the higher energy of that month under the 15 is what tells us in numerology there was magician's tricks being cast throughout the entire month. So everything we watched with the Iran and all this stuff, and then the ceasefire, and then it didn't hold, and it was, it was one thing after another, how all of that went. And then you get to the 7, which is internal energy, and it's reflection, and it's self-renewal, and which is the cycle you're in right now. You're taking what you've done in the last 6 years of your personal life experience, and you're kind of going within a little bit as you have moments to do it, and you're kind of cleansing. And a year from now, you'll be in what we know as the harvest year, which brings you to the 8. And the 8 is about reaping the rewards of what you've done in the last 7 steps previous to that moment arriving. And then you're back at 9, and everything starts clearing out again. And 9 energy is very intense, which is why on a global scale, 2025 always told us, well, I coined it, I always have little themes I do for all the way, every cycle is working however it is. And it's the year of the observant warrior. That's what we're all meant to be doing here. If we're going to, as I always call it, never compromise living consciously. Everything that we do, we need to approach it with a warrior energy and be very observant, so that we're not pulled into that conflict, and we're not pulled into the anger on this planet, and we're not pulled into what are we watching right now? Who's not angry anymore that you see? I don't care what political side of the coin you are, and I don't even believe in the politicians anyway, because most of them aren't telling us anything of truth. But they're here, and their money and their greed and their egos and their power and their control, and that's how they're utilizing all of this information on a different level, where it's not helping anybody. I mean, there's a reason why you don't learn about astrology and numerology in the general education system, because they don't want you to understand that, because it would allow you to understand yourself. That's the first thing it can ever do, is allow you to understand who you are and how you tick. That's what your birth chart does. That's what your numerology birth chart does. And then you got a whole nother section of conversation, which would get into your birth name and why that's ever significant and how, you're seen in the public. So there's, Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Murray always says this stuff is so dense, and he's absolutely right. And, it's a very complex language to break down for people, but, we try to say, hey, just be prepared for what's coming, because the energy says we need to be prepared as a human race. And
I
whether
don't.
you're living in Canada, or you're living in America, or wherever you're living in the world, there's a lot of big shift happening in 2025. And what will emerge in a very pivotal way moving forward back at one in 2026 is going to be outstanding for humanity to endure.
Yet, if okay, I don't find it dense. Actually, I'm like, but to me, it's. And apologies for this word, and I don't even know if this is a bad word, but to me, it's in the woo. It's like out in this, like you can either, I guess there's probably multiple cross sections of humanity. You could be a fervent believer in it. You could be, I can't even stand to listen to 2 seconds of it. And you can be sitting here
Mm-hmm.
going, okay, well, it's just, like I've read lots of fictional books before where, people can teleport or whatever. And I'm not saying that in line with this. And I hate folks that I cannot see Sharita's her face, because I'm not trying to offend or anything. I'm sure I'm not, but I just I can't see a reaction, which always sucks. So I look at this and I go, okay, I've read lots of fantastic books that are not true stories, if you would, right? They're in a different universe where you get to suspend real world belief, if you would, for a second. So like there's maybe 3 camps. I could be wrong. Maybe there's 15 camps. When I look at this, I go, okay, so the world's going through the 9. But you just said on top of that, I'm going through the 9.
No, you're in
And
the 7 year.
no, but that's what I mean. I'm in my own stage. So it could be a 9-year, 2025 endings, conclusions for the world.
Correct.
But while that's going on, your cycle
Is more important than the outside. So a person's personal forecast is far more important. And not to say that, what we're watching on a global scale is not important, but what we're doing, and again, going back to Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Murray, our line of sight and our sphere of influence is the
yeah,
most important thing you have.
yeah, 100%.
And it's what you can control. That's the only thing we have control over is ourselves. I mean, even if a person is married or, whatever, or they have children, you don't have direct control over that. You have a way to encourage and influence in a positive fashion. Let's hope and hold faith that that's what a person does as a parent, for example. But at the end of the day, their free will is what exists. So people are here to live their own personal experience, which has been, it's been so taken away from them to be able to just enjoy that in any kind of, not bliss per se, but, I mean, let's face it, humanity and living on this planet's gotten highly complicated
It
more than it
certainly
ever
has.
has.
Well, I hate to jump too far. I was just doing quick math in my head and jotting it down. Is there any significance when the world cycle of 9 hits the decade year? So right, like I was doing, I'm like, how do you make, because I started doing the numbers, I'm like, it's going to hit 10. Then you're like, well, actually that turns back to 1. So you answered my question before. And then I started doing it. Well, what happens at 2030? Well, it turns to 5. Nice and easy. 2 3. I get it. Okay. So then so that's going to have the same cycle at 2040, 2050, 2060, 2070. So in 2070, and I mean, hopefully I'm live and living, but that's a long time from now. Is
It
there any
sure is.
significance? Is there any significance to when endings, conclusions, the 9 hits the top of a decade like that, or it just doesn't matter?
Well, what you need to look at simultaneously is what the astrology side of all those cycles are doing simultaneously. So, and it's an excellent point to bring up, because the reason why this year in particular started off so intensely as we watched it is that, so how these infamous planets work, they have ownership over all the 12 zodiac signs, and they have ownership over the numbers. So the same planets are guiding both of those divination tools, which is how I was taught this work, because most astrologers know nothing about numerology or the reverse. The numerologists don't understand astrology. But how I was taught this work is you got to look at them side by side. And once you got that in your head, and you start to see this, this way that, it works, you my God, it's like a crystal ball. So the 9-year is guided by the planet Mars. So, who is, and anybody knows Mars. He's the symbol on the bathroom for the males, and, all that other little controversy, especially here in America, about what bathroom you should be using.
What are you identifying at today, Sharita? Are you identifying as?
I am very female, but I have a masculine personality. There's no question. I'm, I was a tomboy as a kid. I mean, but I know that from my own energy. I know that from my charts. I know that about who I am. I've learned that about myself, and then I could go, oh, okay, there was nothing wrong with that. Not that I can't dress up and look classy when I want to, but I'm a spit the truth, tell it like it is kind of person. I've always been that way my entire life. But the reason why this year was so utterly turbulent. So we clicked into 2025 on January 1st, of course, but that ruling planet of the year, which now Mars is in charge. So that's who I pay attention to when I'm looking at the collective forecast in a focus. I want to see, okay, where's Mars in the transits of astrology? Well, Mars was retrograde as we started 2025. Now, retrograde in astrology is when the planets are measured going backwards. They're not moving forwards. So retrograde, to chimp it down, is a cycle of reflection. Whenever any given planet retrogrades, that's what it's asking. It says, and maybe people in your audience have heard the term Mercury retrograde, because that gets a lot more attention. It's an inner planet. It's a recurring cycle, happens about 3 to 4 times any given year. And it causes the communication and all these movement and all types of plans change, and everything's upside down for 21 days. And it's, can we swear on here?
Yes.
In Mercury retrogrades, if you don't know if you have no idea it's a Mercury retrograde, your life is about a shit show for about 3 weeks if you don't know how to navigate it right. And then you get upset that things change, and then, oh my God, this broke down and I've got to fix this. And, people get, all in a tizant and freaking out, and they don't know how to deal with it gracefully. And that's why I developed one of my e-learnings on Soul Certainty Community is Mastering Mercury Retrograde. I teach people how to navigate those 21 days so they don't have to go, off in, chaos to deal with it. And that cycle, whenever that comes into play, is always happening in a particular area of your birth chart. So it's saying, okay, this is your time to slow down, to take some pause. As you can, carve out time and reflect and go back to what already exists and utilize that time as proactively as you can, instead of, oh, I'm going to implement all these things for the future. So going back to Mars. Now, Mars is our last inner planet that when it is retrograde, it takes that energy of what you do or how we feel on this planet under a Mercury retrograde, and it intensifies it tenfold. So Mars had started retrograding on December 6th of 2024. And then it kept going, throughout the remainder of 2024. was in active retrograde activity as we crossed the threshold of 2025, and it did not turn direct until February 23rd. So everything that we watched, whether it was here in America or anywhere in the world, anything you saw initiated and you saw planted and oh, we're going to move forward at warp speed and all this other stuff, I was like, good luck, because you're all going to have to unwind from it. Because most of the time when you implement very supposed future things under these inner planet retrogrades, and Venus does it too. She's the Venus, Mercury, and Mars are your three inner planets that when they ever retrograde, you have to watch what you're doing for your future, or contracts you're signing, meetings you're having, anything matter of importance that you want to have some form of longevity or long-term success come out of it. So we've unwinded from what we know is the shadow, which is just once that planet, either three of them, they retrace and go backwards in the sign. They don't literally do that up above, but as you're looking at a chart and you're looking at that way the math works on that wheel, they are measured backwards in the degrees of the zodiac sign they happen to be present in. So they have a shadow period, which is the most intense time after the retrograde is over with, that you correct and unwind from all of it. So you can go forward again. So we opened this year with the guiding planet saying, hey, humanity, you're supposed to be reflecting. And you're just meant to be like, this isn't like rah, New Year's resolution time. This is like, hey, let's just pull back. Let's take it easy a little bit, and just observe and take time in our own life to reflect. But what did we watch? I mean, the stuff that went on under that Mars retrograde alone from December 6th until the 23rd of February was quite something. And we've watched all this stuff like already. I mean, you've seen some of it. You haven't watched every single thing unwind itself because, there's more to come as the year will progress to unkink what got tied up in a knot kind of, energetically, if you could call it that. And what was insane about this year, Mars turned direct on the 23rd. 4 days later, Venus turned retrograde for 6 weeks. And then by the middle of March, she turned retrograde March 1st. And by the middle of March, then Mercury turned retrograde. So you had this double layer cake of reflection going on from both these inner planets of Venus and retrograde, which is another whole like WTF. So we kept moving into March, and then we moved into the almost mid-April. She went direct on the 12th, and Mercury had gone direct on April 7th. And I mean, we all know what we watched and the things, and, Trump with the tariffs and all these things. And what did he do? He delayed a lot of it. He didn't even keep it the way he originally said it, which he does about a lot of things. But, it was such an intense year, the way it kicked off, and it was nothing but reflection after reflection we were in 5 months of reflective cycles that were critically important for anything people were throwing out there for future success. So we're getting ready for another Mercury retrograde that comes in July, by the way. So,
So what do you expect in July then?
A global storm. That's what the numbers tell us. The numbers tell us there's a global storm.
I love how she laughs,
coming.
folks, but you're like, a global storm. I'm like, well, that's ominous. But you already told me that there is the energy's, I forget how you put it, energy's polarized. You can have it negative or positive. So right away I go, okay, well, let's not focus on the negative then. Let's focus on the positive, because you're telling me even when there's tons of energy, if you take it for the positive, it could be the best time of your life. You take it for the other side, the other side and, put yourself in a state of fear. Well, I mean, we just get 2020 all over again, pretty much.
Exactly. And, Shaun, the most important thing I ever observe, and we always hear Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Murray talk about this, is, how people are so disconnected at this point in time because of the smartphone and, the technology. And, I said it, years ago. I said, there's nobody teaching responsibility with these devices, which they're designed to take you away from yourself. They're designed to keep you distracted. They're designed to keep you agitated and in this instant now gratification energy that isn't what reality is. We don't have instant gratification. I mean, we've been conditioned and programmed to believe that that's the reality now and in the world of complying to convenience. But that's not how humans are meant to operate at all. But we need to, and I love his new channel, The Path Forward, but what we need to do is start to teach people how to be responsible with this technology. It's wonderful that it exists, but it cannot be abused. It should not be a source of addiction for people. And it's an equal, reason why people are turned off. They're not even able to comprehend what I'm saying because it's like, whoop, it goes right over their head. They just want to go look at their Instagram feed and go see what the latest reel says because they only have an attention span of a gnat. And I don't mean to insult anybody. And I'm sure people listening to your podcast are here because they are reachable, teachable, and they want to be educated and they want to learn something. And they know something is awry in the world and they don't believe what they're seeing. They know it's false in so many layers of understanding that it's false. It's not genuine. It's not heartfelt. It's not loving. There's nothing along those lines with what we're doing. And, going back to the polarity, when you understand how, any number works or any cycle is asking you to be doing particular things, you want to gravitate to that positive energy of whatever that channel is granting. And when it's saying, hey, it's time to reflect. Well, if you don't do it, you get what you get. And you want to push forward and you want to force things, it's going to not turn out well in the future. I mean, people who get married under Mercury retrograde, I mean, why we've got so many divorces? Because people get married under Mercury retrograde or a Venus retrograde, even worse. I mean, it's never going to last. It'll fall apart at some point in the future if it doesn't fall apart, rather quickly.
I don't know what to say to that because I'm like, as far as marriage goes, any marriage goes, I'm like, I knew less than zero before, and I got married. That means I hit the lottery of luck to be married to a woman that I truly love. I think it gets better every day. We have 3 beautiful kids, and like everything is, don't get me wrong. Do we have ups and downs? Yes, every marriage has that.
Of course.
But you're saying
that's part of seeking to understand before being understood. That's how you get through a good marriage. So you're obviously meant to be together. How old were you when you got married?
No, now you're really pushing.
Or how mature were you? I guess that I should go back to that.
I think we're coming up on 11 years, so I must have been 28.
So okay, perfect. So you got married at your Saturn return. That's beautiful. Because that's a whole thing. People who get married in their 20s, early 20s, it typically, I mean, there are special cases, but most people who get married before around 28 years of age, it doesn't last because they made the decision when they weren't fully through. A Saturn return is the first time it's ever happened in your chart. Everybody does it. Everybody's got a natal Saturn in their birth chart. It's positioned whatever sign it was in when you were born, but it takes that planet 28 years to get all the way around when you're looking at your current forecast to get back where it was when you were born. So many people, when they wait until their late 20s, moving into the early 30s to get married, it's the better choice. And then because they know themselves on a different level than they did when they were, years back. When we are all in our 20s, we're still awakening to who we really are. And so by the time we reach the close of that particular time frame in our life, we're at this Saturn return, all of us. It happens for a couple of years in our life because Saturn doesn't move very quickly. All the planets move at varying rates. That's another thing to understand about why the cycles do what they do. And, outer planets take years to get through one sign alone. So sometimes when you feel like, oh, I got a block of years where, this area of my life has felt, my finances have felt off, or my career hasn't been where I wanted it to be, or, whatever the case would be on the personal experience. It could be very well the presence of whatever planet on a outer planet basis is sitting in that area of your life, and it's going, hey, you got these little humps to get over, and you got, everybody's, like I said, there's no two moments in time the same way twice. That's why we are such an individual. So we get shoved into this funnel of one size fits all, which takes away from understanding who you truly are. And when you dive into a chart and you dive into your numbers and you dive into all of it, you get who you are. There's not many people I sit down with, and if I sit down with them and do their personal reading, they're like, how in the hell did you know this from me giving you just the day and the month and the year I'm born with a time and a location? They're blown out. They don't understand how I could even tell them anything about themselves. But
what do you tell them?
All kinds of things about, well, we do the spending time in 9, what's the current forecast, what's been going on with that. But when you get into fusing that astrology and numerology, vantage points together about how you got here, the sun sign you are, the day of the month you're born on, two of the most significant places to start. It represents really the genuine core of how you tick, what your talents are, what your mission in life could be, or why do you gravitate to wanting to be an accountant versus wanting to be a doctor, or whatever occupation or kind of line of work that has always intrigued you. And then you get people who are they get programmed, or they don't listen to what they really want to do, and they go into a different direction. And then when they're in their 40s, that's when they decide, oh my God, I've always wanted to do this since I was a kid. And then they finally change careers and they wind up doing what they're supposed to do, and that typically always aligns with who they are because they finally paid attention on a different level. So,
Well,
there's nothing I can't tap into or see, I guess, is basically the bottom line.
What you said there at the end towards, like you don't do what you're supposed to do and you go off and and whatever age it is, it hits you. Well, that's literally part of my story, right? I think most of the audience knows came back from playing hockey and then, started in the oil field. And I don't know what it was. Was it 5 years in? I just was very unhappy. I had everything going right, but I was very unhappy. This isn't a unique story. As you just pointed out, this is like a very common story. What's uncommon is for people to take the leap and actually go chase what they want to do. That's probably the uncommon part of it.
Correct. There's so many people not doing what they're supposed to do and what they're meant to be doing because they're Linda Goodman had an expression, and it's very true. She said, you're trying to be a square peg fitting in a round hole. It doesn't work. And so, again, the way culture, education, and how it's all set up, how the powers that be, oh, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Oh, go follow the crowd. Go follow the Joneses. Keep up with those Joneses.
Well,
And that's why people miss the mark about themselves unless they choose to step back at some point, because life has gotten so complicated that they have to take a look at it. Because most people don't make change until something severe happens, whether it's a health crisis or they're just so utterly miserable that they lose they lose everything in some, they're just unhappy, and why people are depressed, and you've got, all that. But if you step away from keeping up with the Joneses and step away and look at yourself and really pay attention to it on a, how it's personally working for you, you're gonna do what you need to.
if I was fully in the know of this and I wanted to use the negative energy to control people, like one of the first things I would do is I would tell them, or well, I don't know if how I'd tell them this, but like, you basically just outline, sorry, no two moments in time are the same way twice. And
Correct.
then you point to every kid then is born at a different date, time, date right down to a specific time, right? Because if
Yeah.
you go down to the moment they're born, that's a very specific spot,
Yeah.
and yet there's no way for the other side, and I mean the other side, because I think you've eloquently said, like, you can either build people up or you can pull them down. And if I want
That's
to pull
right.
people down to rule over them, I don't want them to know that, because that makes each one of them very unique, and I don't want them to think that they're special. And two,
Mhm.
I want to hold them in fear, because we've seen, first and foremost, when you keep people in fear, they do irrational things. Like, it's just like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And then on the flip side, when you get out of that and you cannot be controlled, let's say, as Tom Luongo would say, folks, be ungovernable.
Mhm.
It's hard to control. And what is that? Well, you start to trust yourself and probably a few other things, and nobody can tell you what to do. And that, if I'm on the other side, that's the complete opposite of what I want. I want a bunch of worker bees that listen to every command and just march in a straight line almost. I want to be able to just know exactly what they're doing at all times. And that way, if you go high enough, and I guess my brain goes high, overseer, lord overseer, something in a very dark way. Um, I want them to be miserable, not because I don't want them to miserable in the sense that they can't find their way out of the trap. And the trap is, as you're pointing out, is the energy trap. When energy comes onto the planet, there's two ways it can go: positive and negative. So you keep them to negative. That way they can't escape what you've built for them.
Exactly. And again, we've never had the ability like we do now as a human race. Again, going back to the technology. So the technology and the lack of responsibility with it is where humanity really has to check themselves.
Yeah, but once again, yes, I 100% agree. But if you're paying attention to this device, right? There's been enough warning signs out there, Sharita, to be like, listen, there's documentaries on it now saying, there's podcast. You can go listen to 1,000 podcasts on it about how, like, it's trying to take your attention. It's literally an algorithm trying to create your focus on that. And as soon as you do that, where isn't your focus? Where your feet are, where you should be. And so there's been enough warnings for human beings, um, that giving a child at a very young age too much screen time is a poor choice. And we can talk
Absolutely.
about that as much as we want, but it relies back on human beings to make the, I don't mean hard choice in that it should be a hard choice, just in, like, it's easy to give a kid whatever and they go off and they can be silent for 5 hours or whatever it is, because they can just zone into it. As a kid playing a video game, I was no different. You gave me Spider-Man on, or whatever, on a console, I'd lock into that thing for 10 hours. And so
I
this
know.
isn't something new. It's just the availability of it is new.
Well, it's funny you bring up the video games, because, years back prior to these devices that we now all have as well, I mean, they started conditioning people with those video games. I mean, there's no question about that. I never got into them. I mean, I'm a unique person. If anybody finds the article, Get to Know Sharita, it was done on Canvas Rebel last year. And, they asked me a question about, what did your parents do to influence you, when you were younger? And I said, well, I kind of had some pretty, not so charming behavior. So I always had I was raised by parents who gave me consequences for, hey, if you did something wrong, you're going to have to, have something taken away. So they took television away from me as my punishment. So I always learned other things to do. So I never got hooked on TV, like way back. And it struck me so hard when I was younger about the danger of television alone. So any of that kind of thing where you get so sucked into it, it's it's like look at what people do. I mean, they're glued to the news, they're glued to streaming now, or whatever they're doing, and watching all the time. And this is another reason why I've completely stepped back from video, and I truly just do audio, because people have stopped. They don't cultivate the habit in their life of taking a silent listen and being still, because we are just conditioned to do otherwise at this point. I mean, we always need to be satisfied on some level. But, you made another point about trusting yourself. And that's another thing people don't do. And if you can't take a silent listen, you're never going to know how to trust yourself, let alone understand what your intuition is trying to tell you. It should be telling you. And I think that's how humanity got very caught, is that they don't, unless they're willing to do it, they don't step back. They don't reflect. They don't understand these cycles. They don't know what to do when it's a full moon once a month. And I mean, my God, everybody sees a full moon. And most people know, and lunar cycles alone would, open doors for people to understand how to time their lives in a proactive fashion. I mean, there's like multitudes of layers of things that we're always keeping an eye on. And when you get things like, I explained in the spring of, how we got out of that Mars retrograde and then we went right into these other two overlapping, very intense cycles of reflection. And most people had no idea that's what's actually going on, unless you follow astrology or you have any idea. So they just got caught up in more of the chaos because they're not choosing to pull back. So if we know when is the best time to pull back, we know then when to move forward, and we know how to observe better. But if we're always caught up in having to watch something and stimulate ourselves, and that's where I think people need to take a serious look at that, about how their lives function, and how happy are they with the results at the end of the day that they get.
When you talk about moons, or sorry, the moon and its cycle, on a full moon, what should people be doing?
Reflecting. So that moon, when it becomes full once a month, that is hitting an area of your chart. It's one of the 12 sections that it's all divided into. So is it in your career? Is it in your money? Is it in your home and family life? Is it in your friendships? Is it in your own ability, to relate to other people? Is it in your physical health? Does it deal with your creativity or your children? It depends. So it's asking you, as that full moon will have a peak moment. That's when the sun and the moon are directly opposing each other once a month. This is, nothing people can't see. And the moon in astrology guides emotions, which is in our feelings. So it's why a full moon is always intense, and people have accidents more often, and a police station would tell you, my god, the thing's going on, it's always a full moon. And I used to bartend years ago, and I can tell you on a full moon, people were always, inject alcohol into, a full moon situation, and people's emotions going even more awry
Well, and
because
I'm
they're
married
not
to
even conscious anymore.
a school teacher. They always talk about the kids on a full moon.
Yeah, right. And even without alcohol involved or anything like that, yeah, people's emotions are more, I mean, they're on the surface because that moon is getting that full reflection. So then when the moon, we call it waning. So once the full moon peaks, it wanes for the 2 weeks. And that's what we just finished that as we're able to record this. So we had a full moon on June 11th and it waned until June 25th. So we just had a new moon and we're able to now start new. When you have a new moon, that's when the sun and the moon are together. That's why you don't see the moon at all, because they're right on top of one another. And then, a couple of days after a new moon, after sunset, you start to see that moon come up off the horizon after the sunset in that little sliver. And then it starts gaining that reflective light back as the waxing phase is going on. So when you have a new moon back to the full moon under the waxing phase is the most optimal time of the month to be planting and starting new things in your life. Minus the fact that if you've got any important retrograde to observe, you have to bear that in mind. And that will change month to month depending on, where we're at and what all the other planets are doing, because again, no two moments in time are the same way twice. And of course, the lunar calendar doesn't coincide with the Gregorian calendar. So you also have a system of, our finances, our quarterly reports, and, all the way business has established itself, that it's the beginning of the month, the end of the month, you got to pay rent at the beginning of the month. Well, if your cycles, if the lunar cycles are, which they don't ever agree with it, it's why we're not observing time the way that we should. I guess that's the best way to say it to people. We're following this Gregorian calendar, measuring time, which does tell us a lot of numerological things. But those lunar cycles, and if anybody understands the Native American Indians, first and foremost, or any other ancient cultures, they always revered the moon because they understood what it did and how you're meant to work with it. And if you know how to work with the lunar cycles alone, you will gain amazing value in your life.
I want to ask you a different question, and I'm curious the answer you're going to have. Uh, I assume other people have had this feeling where they're somewhere and they just know they're in the wrong place. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense?
Sure. Well, that would be trusting your gut instinct. And most people will say, if it like you, and you've probably heard this multiple, and anybody listening, you've probably all done this at some point in your life. You get that, you're in the wrong place, but then you kind of keep going anyway. And then something really happens that's not so happy. And you go, well, if I only listened to myself, I had that feeling and I had that. People need to learn how to trust that initial, what that is, and not turn it away, or not turn it off, and not go, oh, I must be crazy. Oh, I must be whatever. And no, the more people understand that they need to pay attention to that, they would also get 10 times better results in their life because they would avoid things before trouble shows up.
I'll go back then to, if you're looking at the rest of 2025, right? Endings, conclusions, if I'm doing my notes correct. And it
Correct.
being the year of Mars, if I remember correct as well.
Mars
Correct?
is in charge of the year. So
Okay.
yeah, that's
And
what we're
and and you
watching.
and you're staring at all your charts, and I just have this like my brain is just like I can just see the table of like 17 things going on all at the same time. Well, it's moving over there. This is happening. And well, that's sliding over there. And this is where you're at in your calendar. Anyways, I'm chuckling because I'm like, it isn't just like, oh yeah, it's Mars and this is what it is. So you must stare at a paper and almost laugh at times when it's like, oh, you're Taurus. And that's what it says. And you're like, what is anyways, I assume that's way oversimplified because when I listen to you, you're talking about so many different things all at the same time, which could make it really confusing because if you don't have it sitting in front of you, you can be listening to this and going, oh, how on earth do you get to the bottom of that? Now, that is a whole lot I just said. If I look at June, July, August, the rest of the year, and I don't know how far out you want to go, but knowing endings, conclusions, Mars, and a whole bunch of other things in there, what would you say to people listening about the rest of 2025?
Well, let's just take a look at September, and I'll explain why I would pinpoint that as the most pivotal. And not that the summer is not going to like gradually pull in, increased energy, more turbulence, more, disturbances in the force if we can, quote Star Wars, but by the time we reach September, excuse me. So one of the things we, know within the year, and your personal forecast works this way. So that spin in time in 9 that we do every 9 years, and we just keep going back, and it's affecting us in a different way every, the next 9-year chapter. But within the year itself, there's another pattern of that 9 in calculation. So currently, as we're concluding June, it's been a 6. It's a higher energy of 15, which is forewarned us about magician's tricks, and that's a whole understanding that we watched happen in June. Beyond July's taking the human race to inner work because we're going to move into the 7, but it's the higher energy of the 16, which is very tricky energy. Plus, there's a whole bunch of retrograde stuff going on, which is going to complicate things. So if you don't know how to pull back and observe even more than you may or may not already be doing, it's going to make your head spin a little bit. And August moves us into the 8 on a monthly basis. So when we reach September, in a 9 universal year for 2025, September is going to match the year as a 9 month. So the most dramatic conclusions, conflict, aggressive action, conclusions, finalizations, you will watch the strongest throughout September. And what makes September extremely emotional, connecting the dots to astrology on top of it, is that you're under a huge eclipse season during September as well. And eclipses are attached to the new and the full moons, which also heightens energy emotionally, feeling wise. So, if the powers that be obviously have access to this information, they're doing a little gradual thing. But if we're going to see like a real explosive, just end, and not to say the end of humanity, I don't mean it like that, but just like that you watch a lot of dramatic things come to a close. September is going to bring it in tenfold. And then we pivot into October, which will pull us, still finishing this 9-year, and we're going to be in a month of new beginnings. So we're in a 1 personal month in October, which is a preview of 2026's coming attractions, of what we may be seeing on a global scale. Ooh, what's new here? What's new there? The good thing about October is we don't have any interplanet retrogrades during October, which is actually a blessed thing. at the time, energetically anyway. But I'm sure whatever September is going to roll out, it's really, I mean, I think, it won't be
So
light and fluffy.
if I was the dirtiest trickster that ever pulled tricks, that ever stepped foot on this planet, and I'm listening to you and believe everything you're saying, what would be my time of this year, or maybe I don't know, you just tell me, when you're like, yeah, you should be paying attention during this time because they're going to be shysters doing things, or is it just all the time?
Well, at this point in human, existence, it's all the time. But does it like kind of does that energy and that need for really observant awareness kick up higher? It ebbs and flows, yes, at particular times. So whenever these retrogrades are in effect, that's one thing. And I would not, July is not going to be a month where we're going to get calmer by any means, unless you know how to reflect. And, again, understand your line of sight, have your sphere of influence very well maintained. I mean, I truly believe we're going to be watching some very strong stormy moments as July is here. However they may or may not arrive. But it's like, we said it earlier, it's like a global storm coming. So it's you got to know how to stay in the eye of it. There is, and that's the, going back to the positivity, there's always an eye of a storm. But that's really takes gut instinct and intuition to stay in that eye so you don't get all caught up in that wind. You don't get caught up in whatever it is that shows up, if that makes sense.
It kind of makes sense. I'm just like in my brain, I go, so you just turn your phone off, or is that it's not as simple
It
as that?
it it doesn't mean you don't wanna have, obviously, I mean, I don't think for anybody right now, trust me, I try to turn my phone off, but I take very good breaks from it. So I discipline myself with that thing, and, I'm not on it all the time. I have every notification sound off of that phone. I don't get news alerts. I don't get any of it. When I want to check it out, that's when I go do it. And of course, I have, the alternative sources of information that I listen to. Um, I keep my, keen eye on the mainstream media because I want to see what they're doing to be convincing, and what's the latest, But
How important? Sorry, Sharita. How important is word choice?
their word choices.
Yes, correct.
Oh, extremely. Here's an interesting thing. We didn't get talking about lexigrams, but our words have to be very careful to never be used as a sword. The words and sword are the same letters, just mixed up. That's something we do with lexigrams and how we can spell out the truth, which is also something I said before with the words silent and listen. The same letters. Rearrange. It's a whole nother thing. Things I do exploring titles and names and
And what was
anything.
the and what was sword and what was the other one?
Your words, never allow your words to be a sword. Which how much are we watching these
Why not?
people? Well, why do we want to cut people with our words? But we do, right? I mean, it can happen if you're not being
Even if
operating with a moral compass, in other words. And
even if
I think you've seen leadership at this point utilize their words like a sword more than you ever have. And that never used to be like it is now. It's like there's no filter anymore. It's like anything goes. And I find that to be a very Well, it's very unconscious, number one. It's certainly not loving, it's not heartfelt, and it's not finding a solution to any of these problems that we need to solve as a human race.
Donald Trump, do you think he follows this?
Well, it's interesting with Donald. I have observed him. I wrote a piece on him years ago, Why Donald Trump Riles America. It's a whole comparison thing of how his chart works with the country and why he stirs us up. Whether you love him or hate him, it doesn't matter. He stirs up people's energy, and that's exactly what he's done. Even before he was president, he was doing that, you know. But what I watch him do, his being born to the 14th of June, if he has a numerologist who understands how to work with him consciously, he's not listening to the advice. Because what I would tell him is, you always trust the wrong people. You're constantly surrounding yourself with people that, to be frank, screw you over. And he needs to stop doing that. I don't know how much the man chooses to meditate, but I don't think he does that at all. I mean, maybe he does. I don't know him. I mean, obviously, but whether or not it's a theater show or what is it at this point? But his new administration took over under that Mars retrograde, which is why it is, the energy coming at him is so turbulent in every direction at this point, you know. And we know the mainstream media does nothing. I mean, they did it in 2016 in the first term, and they're going to do, they're doing it in multitudes of ways now. But is he truly listening? I don't know.
How
Because
about a guy?
I don't see it from what he does, especially the things he did with this whole ceasefire thing and, calling them to do that with, Israel and Iran. And I put out a quick thing about, it's another thing the moon does. It's called moon void of course. And I refer to the Reagan administration in it because Nancy Reagan hired an astrologer named Joan Quigley. And after she was done serving the administration, she wrote a book called What Would Joan Say? And I highly recommend anybody out there to pick it up and read it. It's an excellent book. I mean, bottom line is, she ran that administration on astrology. And one of the things Reagan did, he would never initiate any matter of importance under a moon void, of course. And when I watched Trump drop all that, under those, it was a long moon void on Monday and Tuesday, the 23rd and 24th of June. I was like, not good. It won't last. And that's something the moon void, of course, talks about. And,
So let me ask you a
it's all
different
about
question.
timing our success. So I don't know if he's got a good astrologer. Let's put it that way.
Well, let's flip that a different way. Is there a world leader or an influential figure that you're like, they definitely do?
Oh, I think whenever they drop the queen, when they drop the queen's death, I don't know if that's exactly good or bad per se, but they were using a magician's trick that year in 22 when she passed.
So that's the British.
Yeah.
So you think the British then, whether that's wherever, whoever that is,
Yeah.
you're like, they're doing things over there that are falling in line with what I see.
And it's more on the negative side to control and hypnotize, mental suggestion, as it were. That is something like, we've been talking about June as a magician's trick month. In 2022, September was that same kind of understanding during that year. And the thing about this 15, when the 15, the higher energy of 6, 1 and 5 reduced to 6. When you see things on 4 and 8 calendar dates, so that's the 4th, the 8th, 13th, 17th, 22nd, 26th, and if the month happens to have 31 days, then you'd have the 31st to factor in. But obviously, we know all months don't do that. But in September of 2022, they dropped that information on September 8th. A year later, in August of 2023, we had the Lahaina fires, August 8th. And then the last year, we were in another 15, Watch the Magician's Tricks month. For date of July 13th was the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, or as it appeared. So these people know something. Because when I watched all that and the years kept coming and all these things kept going, I'm like, okay. And then what did we see, by June 13th of this year? And then what he did on 22nd, a 4 vibrational date, what he did very early in the morning, it was their time, June 22nd, that he struck them over there, or how that supposedly appeared to happen. Is it a trick? Did it really happen? And then, if you're following any news, it's like, oh, maybe they didn't really destroy everything. Oh, yes, they did. Oh, no, maybe they didn't. You don't know what the hell is going on unless you're going to your alternative sources. But what that mainstream media wants people to be gripped on is the trick and the mass hypnosis and that mental suggestion, because it's rigging them in fear. Who isn't like, oh my God, is the world going to blow up by nuclear explosion at this point? They got everybody like on edge. I spoke to a friend recently who lives in New York City, and he's like, the vibe down here is like post 9/11. Like the whole energy of that New York City is on edge, like people just walking around. So
yeah, well, then they're seeding it with terrorist attacks and different things like that, right? They're seeding in the fear.
Exactly. And yes, what could happen next? And
What could happen next? This could get really bad.
Yeah. The boogeyman's going to come and get you. And, I'm sure you've taken in Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Murray. I certainly support, in the cycle, support a cyber attack is more likely than anything. But would other forms of, conflict be able to arrive? Absolutely. Is it plausible? Yes. Does it mean it's going to absolutely happen? No. But the energy is there for it to happen is always what people need to understand. So being prepared and knowing how to stay out of that line of conflict wherever you may or may not be living, because everybody lives in somewhere different. Your country's a big country. Our country is huge. We're the same. It's like not everybody's lifestyle is the same exact way, obviously. So what happens on the East Coast may not have anything to do with if you live in the middle of the country. It just depends. But if they did something cyber, that could lock up a lot of stuff real quick.
You're reminding me of, and I haven't thought of this guy in a long freaking time. I had a guy named Boyd Anderson on the show. I think people can recall that. And he talked about, I'm just going to see if I can find it. Boyd Anderson, author of Under the Radar 537555, which is his account of the largest gold heist ever done. And he just kept talking about these numbers over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I was like, I don't even know what to do with this story. Like, I just remember it, right? And I'm like, what is this? Now I'm like, I wonder what Sharita would say about that episode, right? Because he was talking
You'll
numerology.
have to send me the link and I'll listen to it. I'll see if I can grasp what he's talking about. There was, do you know who that Tom Numbers guy is?
Tom Numbers, nope.
Okay, he's from overseas. I think he's from England, and he's all with that kind of like that Q route, and I never got into that. It didn't resonate with me. Let's just give it that. And so I watched this guy Tom Numbers once. Somebody, people send me stuff all the time naturally, and I was like, what in the hell is this guy talking about? I mean, he wasn't talking about numerology. Not the way it was taught to me in any case. I'm like, this guy's just like off in La La Land somewhere. I mean, when you said
When it
woo
comes
before, I'm like, oh, this guy is super woo. I'm like,
when it comes okay, that's funny. When it comes to I don't know what to make of it. I don't even know if there's anything to make of it. I always think maybe it's just my eyes playing tricks on me, right? But you see it like um the same number. I think of Jamie Sinclair to the folks listening who's been a guest in her lots. He always talks about the number 17 and how 17 is his number and he sees it everywhere and it just seems to come up in conversation and it just, it isn't him seeding it. It's just like it pops up. And what do you make of things like that? Or is it just complete happenstance?
oh no, no, no. And I dare not even I think I'll hold it together, but it's funny that you would bring that number up in my
17?
in my world. In
17?
my current personal experience, that's the date of my mother's passing, and I think she probably just like gave you a little bang. But you do see we do see numbers commonly
Sorry to hear about
because
your
they
mother. That's
resonate with us.
sorry.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Sharita. Sorry about your
Oh,
mother. That's
oh,
tough news.
thank you. That was my personal shockwave under the Mars retrograde as the year opened, but where I certainly won't give any credit to the American medical system. But that's another topic for another day.
Sure, sure.
But
Okay, so numbers reoccurring. What do you?
oh,
What,
they do. So if you see and now let me ask you this question: do you ever see the same numbers aligned, like 3 or more?
yes, it
Okay.
drives me nuts
Okay.
because
Well, here's what I would invite you to do, or if any of your audience members, because everybody is doing this on some level. When you see the same numbers all together, like it's 333 on the clock or 1111
no,
or
no,
whatever the
no.
case is.
Listeners will get a kick out of this. It's always 222, and I have a co-host on Fridays who makes fun of a show in Canada, which is 22 minutes, and he calls himself 222 minutes. And I see that stupid number everywhere. I almost start taking screenshots and make him laugh about it because I'm like, literally, it's everywhere. It drives me nuts because I don't want to give Twos any more credit than what he is. Love you, Twos. But I mean, honestly, I'm like, I go places and it's just, I'm like, there it is again. It's almost daily. And I'm like, now I'm just starting to see it. And it's in my head.
Well, 222 and oh, boy, you can't make I'm sorry. I hope no sooner did things happen with my mother, but a very close lifelong friend of mine also passed away whose birthday was 222. So I'm sorry, but the fact that you bring that up is also like I think you have people on the line and you may not understand that, but they're talking to me through you. They just wanted to say hello, and I take that in the highest of faith. But 222 to see that, in general for anybody who sees it, um, is aligning your emotions to find balance and harmony. I mean, I can there's on sharitastar.com, which is my website. If it's all the way down on my little sidebar thing on the right side, you'll see it's a picture that has 1111 on it, and I explain the aligned numbers and what do they mean. Um, the most important thing to do when any of us see those numbers, however they would display themselves. I mean, it can be a price you pay for something at the grocery store or whatever the case is, or when you're looking at the money in your bank account or, things like that. Like I know I see them that way as well. And maybe I just pay attention to it on a different level than the average person, but numbers are it's my life, obviously. But what we are always being asked to do is when you see them, you want to just pause for a second and what was on your mind? What's there? Because they want you to stop and pay attention to that. Whatever it is, were you worried about something? Were you happy about something? What was the matter that was in your head at the moment of you seeing them? any of those numbers, that could be in alignment like that. They're trying to get your attention so that you slow down and go, okay, am I going too fast? I meant to go with that, depending on whatever it is that's on your mind at the moment that you see them. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm certainly going to pay attention to the next time, right? Because I'm like, I know I'm going to see the
Well, I'll
stupid
get back to you
numbers.
on that because I haven't
Because I
tried the exercise yet.
I mean, I'm just like, I chuckle about it because I'm like, well, it must be because I see, every week I see 222 minutes, right? Like he's my co-host. I don't even call him by his real name anymore. I just call him Twos, right?
Twos. That's great.
So like I go to a hotel one weekend and I stay in room 222 and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Come
Oh,
on.
I love it.
This cannot be happening to me. I almost went back downstairs. I'm like, you can give me any room you want.
Oh,
You just can't
no,
give me
that was great.
222.
It was like the angels were right there with you. That's
Well,
that's
fair
what
enough.
I would say.
Well, I'm gonna be like, okay, what am I actually thinking about right now? Right? Am I
Yeah.
cursing twos in my head? Is that why it keeps coming up? I don't know. I'm kidding. It's
No,
just it's
no.
just funny because out of all the numbers, it's like over and over and
Like,
over and over
that's your
again.
number. I'd have to look in your chart and see if you have, like, a 2-2 thing or, you may have something in your whole looking at everything and it's, entirety, and there's probably something to it. But I mean, why do you get drawn to that? Maybe you have a 6 life path too, which would also equate because all the 2s together equate 6 naturally. So, if you
And what's this?
add add them together, which is how you do things.
I don't even know what to like. Honestly, Sharita, I'm like, this has been one of the most fascinating conversations I've had lately. There's been a lot of heavy conversations on this side, right? So in July, I'm taking my wife is done teaching, my kids are out of school, and we take a month. And so like when this airs, that's why I said before we started, I'm like, this won't air for a couple weeks
Right.
because I'm actually like my plan is to turn my phone off for a week and just like I'm not paying attention to this. I went through all college with no phone, so I graduated in 2011, and my wife was so annoyed because I didn't ever carry a phone with me. I was just like, I'm not doing this. I don't need to be,
Yeah.
answering a phone wherever they want to get me. If they want to find me, they'll find me. Otherwise, just leave me alone. And of course, as time goes on, everybody gets a phone because that's the only way the world works. And people get really, really annoyed if they can't get a hold of you. It's like
Yes, they do.
life goes on,
Yeah.
folks. It's not the end of the world. Well, here in July, we take a month. And that's more than most people get. So I'm very fortunate to be able to go to my wife's parents. And, certainly I'm not going to leave the phone off for a full month, but I'm looking forward to just like turning everything off.
Yeah,
Right. And
and
just like,
having
I'm not,
that time away from it. Absolutely. And it's the
and,
perfect year for you to be doing that.
but I'm chuckling as I'm thinking about this because, I'm going to have like, I don't know, is it going to be EM Burlingame, folks, the episode before and then this? Nobody's going to see this one coming. They're going to be like, what? It's pretty funny to be honest. I'm like, because you're the first person who's ever come on, and I think pretty rationally, if I may give you like, I mean it in the most endearing sense. Like this doesn't. You're not saying crazy. Like I mean, people may think it's crazy, and maybe they've already turned it off. But I'm sitting here and I'm listening, and I'm like, like the different things going on in the planet. Well, I have tons of friends who believe in energy, right?
Right.
One of my best friends is growing up asked him once upon a time, "What do you think happens when you die?" And I don't know what I was expecting for an answer, but I was not expecting. Basically, it's like, well, our energy has to go somewhere. And I'm like, oh, that was a beautiful answer.
Well, you would have a very wise friend there. Yeah.
Well, at a
Because,
young
I
age,
mean,
too.
I've always used the expression and many mediums, and a medium is a person who really communicates with what we call the other side. Love never dies, and if that existed, between you and a person who's crossed over, once they cross, they communicate with you. I mean, I will tell you, they communicate with me all the time. They use numbers. They just did it with you. I mean, I'm blown out right now, to be honest. You cannot put 17 and 222 together in less than a 2-minute conversation. I'm like, what?
Where do you Where do you put religion and this? Can they coincide, or are you like they're two different things? They're similar things. What do
Well,
they?
this is what, when I, had done some interviews with Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Murray, he has some, strong religious people who follow. And,
As do I.
and I, you know, don't fault anybody for what your faith is or what you want to believe. But most of the time, religion has taught somebody that astrology is like a cult and numbers are satanic, and they have they're not reachable and teachable about it. They don't want to open up and believe it could bring any kind of value to their life. And that's perfectly okay, because I'm not here to convince anybody. It was like I was taught and was told, don't believe my word for any of this. Take it and apply it. And then you see. And I would invite anybody, just start observing a new moon and a full moon, and watch how energy is around a new moon and what happens around a full moon and what happens going back to the next new moon. That'll happen 12 times in one calendar year. It's never the same dates every year, because the lunar cycles are 28 and a quarter days. So that again offsets the Gregorian calendar, which is why the moons are always moving around on, it's not the same. Sometimes they align on the same dates depending on the length of the month, kind of thing. But other than that, you know, and start to maybe observe when it's Mercury retrograde, if you're willing to do that, and see what goes weird and offset and what kind of backup plan you need. And how did you adapt? How did you not freak out? Did you just choose to reflect? Are you willing to self-reflect? I mean, that's all it teaches you. It's not about witchcraft by any stretch of the imagination. I just talk about how to encourage your life to be the most,
Not to not to
navigate challenges with as much grace as you possibly can, and
not not
enjoy
to
the moment as much
not
as you
to
can.
not to give too much personal on my side, I guess. But and then again, who am I kidding, folks? I talk about lots of things in the personal side. I found faith along the journey with the podcast. And as a kid, I read like Harry Potter. And then I ran into
Okay.
people who are Christians, and they said, "Well, that's the devil's work." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Have you read the books?" Like, I get it. It's sorcery and like I get it, folks. But I'm like,
Yeah.
have you actually read the books? I'm like, it's actually there's some really good lessons in there. I'm not saying that you should go out and try and do witchcraft and wizardry. I'm just like, there's some really interesting things in there. And yet, if you just nope, not there. And then we had some very interesting conversations with well, specifically Christians around video games too. I'm like, if I never played video games, I'm like, I just don't know where I would have ended up. And I'm not saying that means video games took me on a certain path, but I grew up playing video games. I didn't
Right.
not do it. And I'm not like this crazy lunatic that played video games and all of a sudden I can't play a video game. I'm like, I hardly play video games at all anymore. Actually, I was the guy in college who didn't have a phone because I just didn't like it. I just don't like having that on the hip. And so I guess I don't sit here and go, if you're a Christian, you can't listen to what you've just said and go, that's something to think on. I'm like, I got to ponder it myself. But I've found Christianity, found Jesus not through the standard operating procedure of going to, I don't know what that would be, church or going to Catholic church, or I'm sure there's a standard operating procedure. This is how you go in. I'm like, nope, that was not my journey. It has been something completely more wild to the right side, and it's brought me back to where I am, to where I sit here and I listen to you and I go, this is very fascinating, because I'm like, I do see 222, and I'm sure I'm going to have a bunch of texts explaining in their thoughts what that is, and you've just given me what your thoughts are, and I'm like, I'm open to just listening. I mean, that's what the podcast has done. It's brought me into different realms of influence, and along the way, I've got to wrestle with some really interesting people and the way they look at the world. I think that's fascinating.
And that allows you to be reachable and teachable. And that is, to me, if we are always a kneeling, submissive student in life, we will always succeed. Because if we ever reach a point, oh, I know it all, and that's it, and I can't go past that, and I can't unwind from that. I'm rooted right here, and I'm not going anywhere else. Then you're not going to keep. I mean, even life, you look at nature and you look at how it exists. It, even when we go into the cycle of winter every year and everything looks like, oh, it looks like it's dead, right? The trees have no leaves, etc. But they come back again. And that's exactly what the cycles in our lives do. They just keep moving and going. And, I will, if people who are religious understand the Bible, which of course they would, there is a lot of interesting things with numbers in that Bible. And who taught me a lot about how there's a very strong correlation to it. And Jesus himself had 12 disciples. There are 12 zodiac signs. According to what I've ever understood, he had one of every sign. That was his 12 disciples, was Aries moving through Pisces. Something to consider. You can go do some research on that.
You're in my head right now because I just looked down. I'm like, this is. I'm like this. I'm turning the phone off, folks. I'm going on holidays. I look down and I got a tattoo on my leg, and the tattoo is 06. And I'm like, oh man, now I'm really.
So you have the 6 on you. We have to find out if you're a 6 life path. I think I'll get back to you post show about your life path. I think that's might be where that's coming from, because
Sure.
you're constant as the day and the month you're born is a 7, which is why you are a seeker of information. And there's another influence of how that works, but it's the adding the year in there is how you're going to figure out what the ground beneath your feet is, which I think it's got to be a 6. I bet it is. Which is also why you have a harmonious marriage, because most 6 life paths have good marriages. It's very important to have that. It wouldn't work any other way for you energetically.
Folks, I hope you're enjoying your July. Sharita, thank you for doing this and coming on. I'm kind of like LTC Stephen Murray right now. I'm like, I don't know what I think of all of this, but I appreciate you coming on and being open to just to sit and talk with somebody who certainly one of the things that I try and champion on this side is to just sit back, listen to a conversation, take from what you want, leave what you don't want, and that's really steered me well in life since I started doing the podcast. I mean, it's led me to here, and that's certainly what I do. I think you said something along the lines of listen to it and then go verify it roughly. And certainly when I bring on any guest, I'm like, the chances of them being right on everything is pretty close to 0. That's an impossible thing, or a pretty tough thing to do. And so like, sit, stew in something and listen to different guests come on. That's what I love doing on this side. So I appreciate you coming on and dealing with me and all my silly questions, because I'm sure I've had a few, but I appreciate you coming on and doing this.
I appreciate all questions, and none of them are silly, especially if we could consider that you're a newbie to all of this, as one may or may not say. So no question is a bad one. They were all wonderful. It's been a pleasure to be here with you and your guests. And that's why we call it conscious forecasting, because the forecast is up to your free will to do with it what you want to. And that's what I truly teach people how to do, is work with the energy. Hey, if you know it's going to rain, are you going to carry an umbrella or not? That's up to you.
It's
right?
Up to you. It is up to you. Yeah.
And that's what the forecast is about. It's saying the energy's here. What are you going to do with it when it arrives? Up to you. Your free will is always in charge, and never let anybody take that away from you.
Appreciate it, Sharita. And once again, thanks for hopping on.
Thank you for having me, Shaun. It's been an absolute pleasure. And to thank you to your audience as well for listening.